Okay, I'm going to introduce myself now formally before handing over to Michelle. So I'm Dr. Jane Gilmour. I'm a co-director of the Infancy and Early Childhood Development Programme, and I'm also a clinical psychologist. And then I'm going to hand over to Michelle, who's going to introduce her and take us through the programme initially.
Lovely. Thank you, Jane. So along with Jane, I'm co-director of the program Infancy and Early Childhood Development. I'm an academic with a background in child psychology and neuroscience, and I'm based in the developmental neurosciences at the Institute of Child Health. Just before we start, just wanted to introduce Sidonie Kilpatrick, who's joined us. She's one of our postgraduate teaching assistants. I don't know if you want to say a quick hello or...
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sidonie. I'm a first-year PhD student in the Institute of Epidemiology and Healthcare, and I'm really excited to meet all you in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sidonie. So we're going to, the way that we're going to do the session is Jane and I are going to present a PowerPoint with just some of the basics of the program, and we'll have a question and answer sort of period after that. If you do have some questions during, you can sort of put up your hand or pop something in the chat, and that's fine as well. We can handle questions as we go through the presentation. So it's a little bit informal in that way, so feel free to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and start to share my screen. So I'm guessing everybody can see the screen at the minute. Is that okay? Yes, I see Jane nodding. So welcome to this presentation, everybody, about our MSc in Infancy and Early Childhood Development. This first slide, it just wanted to give you an overview about what we want to do and what our aims are with this program and how the training works. So we started the program 6 years ago, and the idea was that we really wanted to develop a program that was a bit unique in its focus on early years. So we sort of cover prenatal till about 5 years of life is our most intense focus, but look at it from just a variety of different perspectives. So as saying here and described on the slide, we want to look at sort of physiological, sort of medical aspects, psychology, early social development. We also want to look at education, social policy, lots of different things, public health issues. But the common thread is just the interest in this important sort of first few years of life. As we say, the part of the reason is that we know that children under the age of 5, they normally will experience lots of these different aspects within their lives and their families, even if they're healthy and normally developing. And we also look at children, as we said, who might have different sort of psychological, psychiatric, or medical kinds of conditions where they may even have more interactions with different kinds of professionals within this area. And one of the difficult things, I think, for people working in this area is often some of that knowledge isn't really shared. And that's really what we want to do, is provide an education where we can bridge that and have people aware, so that some of the things about medical issues get into education, for example, and vice versa, understand the reasons behind different kind of public health policies and how they're evaluated in the early years. Why do certain policies get put out and others don't, and looking at those kinds of issues, different kinds of disorders, all of those things, parenting, these kinds of issues are all of the kinds of things that we discuss from a really broad perspective. And although our program is based obviously in the UK, we also try and look at these things from a cross-cultural perspective and compare sort of different systems in different ways and different approaches to these things in different countries and cultures. So the final point on this slide just kind of summarizes what I just said. We really want to look at sort of a broad-ranging view and try and integrate those things when we're looking at children in the first 5 years. So the program is offered as a master's, and this can be taken either full-time within one academic year, or it can be taken as a part-time flexi, what we call flexi modular. So then you can complete the course under any period from 2 to 5 years according to, what works for your schedule. Students for the master's, you take a number of modules or sort of courses that value to a total of 180 credits. And so the structure of the program is that there are 4 core modules, and I'm going to explain what those are in a minute. That counts for 60 credits, or a third of the credits. And then students can choose up to 60 credits of optional modules. And so that will just vary according to, your interests, what you want to look at. So we have, and again, I'm going to explain this in a more detail in a minute, but there's sort of a list of sort of ones that are often chosen that we sort of give you, but there also are many modules across UCL that you can potentially choose. And there's sort of an online module catalog that helps you search for opportunities. So those options count for the 1/3 third of your credits. And then your final dissertation counts for the last third of the credits. And Jane is going to be speaking more about the dissertation and the different aspects of that and what's required. So the core modules that I mentioned, each of these are worth 15 credits. And these are what they are. So the modules in terms of our sort of developmental aspects in early years were arranged chronologically. So we first look at prenatal and newborn development. And then we look at infant development and then the preschool years. Obviously, there's sometimes a bit of overlap in those things, but that's how it's organized. So all of these sort of diverse perspectives we look at within those modules, but the modules are organized according sort of to the dominant age range that we're focusing on. And then there is also a required applied statistics module that's applied through run through the Institute of Child Health. So I'm just going to explain a little bit more about these core modules now. This just gives you a bit of a list of topics that we cover in the prenatal and newborn module. So we try and look at different things, prenatal embryology kind of aspects from the beginning, things like genetic screening, genetic counseling, newborn screening for diseases, practical things like how examination of the newborn takes place, where we can identify whether a newborn is developing normally or is presenting concerns. General common health concerns in this period. And then we also want to look at sort of social, motor, cognitive, the early development from the fetal period into the newborn period, which is sort of the first, few weeks of life. Also, an important aspect that we look at here is the mental health of parents, caregivers. And also we cover what we call developmental origins of health and disease. So we do consider sort of how aspects of early experiences can have longer term effects for much later in life, and seeing what they are and what preventative measures can be taken in place. So this particular module usually takes place in the beginning of October, so right at near the start of term. And the pattern for this and the next 2 modules that I'm going to be speaking to you about is that they're full days from 9 to 5, and the pattern is a Monday, Tuesday, Friday 1 week, and then a Monday, Tuesday the following week, and that's the full module 9 to 5 those days. So they're kind of full days, and it's a bit intense, but it's sort of within that week and a half period that the module will run. And that's the same for the next 2 modules I'm going to describe to you. So the next core module is infant development. That takes place usually end of November time. And we cover the topics mentioned here. Again, some of the topics they're going to carry on because we're looking at the development. So it's kind of building on from what we've learned about in the prenatal and newborn. But obviously there's some additional issues that come into play, and we look at other things like safeguarding. We look a bit more at infant mental health, a bit more at infant attachment. We discuss a little bit more about preterm birth, and start thinking about sort of nursery, what kinds of education or childcare experiences that children might have in the infant years, and how that might affect things as well. And then the module preschool years, that usually happens right at the start of term 2, which is right at the start of January after the holiday period finishes and after the term break. And again, we're carrying on some of the topics we've discussed in earlier modules to see how these things develop, but a lot of more things come into play at this point, things like peer relations and play. We look at early interventions, we look at some early emerging disorders that might happen, things like school readiness, nutrition and exercise, a bit more about supporting children with special needs. So there's a wider range in some sense at this point, reflecting sort of the wider range of experiences and abilities that we would see in the preschool years. And then this is the other applied statistics and research methods is the other core module. This primarily takes place in term 1. Usually towards the end of October is the main teaching for this. And this is just to familiarize people with concepts of study, how to design a study, how data is presented, data analysis. And this is useful, for your research project, but it's also really useful because part of the skills that we're developing in pretty much probably all the modules that you take, whether core or optional, is critical analysis skills and thinking, and being able to really understand statistics of the research articles that you will be reading and be able to critique and evaluate them is really important. So this is where this module is really important for all of the other modules in some sense that we will be looking at. So those first 4 modules that I mentioned are, say, that the core, so they're required, you must take those. And we recommend, if you're doing flexi-modular, we recommend that you take the prenatal, the infant, and the preschool years in your first year, if possible, to have that as a background before you launch into your optional modules. The statistics, you can take in that first year, but it will be required by, obviously, at least by your final year to be able to take that. These are just some examples of optional modules. We actually have quite a range that people sometimes find. So you're not limited to these necessarily, but these are ones that are pre-approved and that people have, quite a few people on the course have taken before. So I'm not going to read them out. You can sort of just have a bit of a look at these, but it gives you a feel for the range of topics that you could choose as optional modules. If you go off this list, as mentioned, that's fine. There's an optional module, a module catalog within UCL that you can have a search for things that you might want to take. If you go off the list, then we would just want you to discuss that with myself or Jane. We just want to make sure that what you choose is sort of reasonable within the program. If you want to take something on archaeology, that might not be suitable for the MSc in Infancy and Early Childhood Development, for example, but there is a range of other topics that might interest you and modules. And these modules, optional modules, need to be chosen by October, usually mid-October. So that's something that we work on early in the year and help you and discuss with you to help you choose your optional modules and make sure that you have appropriate modules, the right number of credits and all those kinds of things, and help you sort that out. So that should be finalized pretty early in the year so that you know what you're doing. When I say that, that's obviously if you're taking the course full-time. If you're doing flexi-modular, then you might decide to defer your optional modules to one of your later your years in your flexi-module program. So I think at this point, maybe I'll just pause. If there's any questions on what I've said so far. Pause for that, but I don't think so. So I'm just going to I've stopped sharing my screen, I think.
I think that should be on that thing. Yes, that's
so now, and so I'm just handing over to Jane. Sorry, just for a transition. Jane is going to be carrying on with the presentation, talking about your dissertation and some other aspects of the program. So over to you, Jane.
Okay, so thank you, Michelle. So we've talked a little bit about the core modules, a little bit about the optional modules, and the third aspect of an MSc is the dissertation. Now you can see a dissertation is worth 60 credits, so it's 1/3 of an MSc, and so it's a major part of the degree, and it is something that we recognise is a pretty major undertaking. And for that reason, we're very carefully lead you through a process of choosing a topic and helping you and supporting you through that process. So first of all, we would really ask you to think about identifying some broad areas of interest. They might be things that have been raised in the course of the lecture so far, or other areas of interest that you have had and explored independently. And we ask you to contact potential supervisors. Now, they may be lecturers, they may be contacts that you've had in your previous academic life, which is absolutely fine so long as they fulfill the UCL criteria. And we also have a number of suggested supervisors, and usually every year we have a number of projects that are already sort of set up and supervisors that you are welcome to contact from a little list that we keep on the module page. Any of those options are absolutely fine. Around about late November of your academic year, we will meet with you and we will discuss both your topic and your supervisor just to check that all's in hand. And so we ask you to fill out some very straightforward forms to describe the project in general, with a recognition that things will change as the project goes ahead, and to check that your supervisor is aware of the process and the deadlines and so on, that you have an agreement basically to have that supervisor and that everyone is on the same page. It's a very good opportunity to just check you're on the right settings, as it were, before the holiday season starts. Sorry, oops, Daisy just forward for some reason. And then from about December, January, you will then work independently with your supervisor, although we do support you in general, but your specialist topic will be discussed with your supervisor, and then you submit in August, if you're joining us next year in August 2024 or August, September of that academic year. So you can see there's a slow and gentle process because we understand the amount of credits that are that are at stake. The types of research project are varied, and you can see here we've got on the slide they're COVID dependent, because we have had experiences where students have had to pivot quite quickly, as we all did in that period of time. We're not anticipating anything of quite of that magnitude happening in the near future, but just to be aware there are options and flexibility if circumstances change. So dissertations might be a primary data collection or analyses, or they may be a secondary data analysis. So in other words, there will be a project already running and you might slot into that project and start some data. You wouldn't do the data collection, but you do the analyses and write it up as part of your project. Or you may do a project that is a systematic or literature review. So you're not collecting data specifically, but you are answering a question using the existing literature. All three of those options are absolutely equal in value, and students will choose depending on their topic, depending on their supervisor's expertise, and depending on what is available in that academic year. These are a few of our past dissertation topics, and there's a lot on the slide, but the reason we've done that is just to highlight to you that there's a wide range of topics that you might explore in the early years. So we might think about language development, parental well-being, neurodevelopmental disorders, in this case, autism spectrum disorder or autism. There could be issues of temperament, exploring the experience of being multilingual, a therapeutic dietary intervention, sibling experiences, or cohabiting with grandparents. So there's a whole range of different topics explored using, whether it's from a linguistic point of view, a psychological point of view, a motor skills point of view. There are a whole range of ways of exploring the early years using your dissertation topic. And we would invite you to really think about enjoying that opportunity to take a deep dive into one aspect of the literature in the early years. The other aspect we want to draw your attention to in terms of the experience that you'll have on this course. We've talked about the core modules, we've talked about the optional modules, we've talked about the dissertation, but in addition, there are other module experiences, lectures, tutorials, and seminars that we offer as part of this course that are very important part of your academic experience. So we offer tutorials on how to use Moodle, for example. So that's just the electronic learning environment that we have at UCL. Lots of other academic centres use them, schools do too, so you might have already come across it, but if you haven't, there's an introduction to that. We help you get access to the library electronic resources, and that of course is fundamental to any academic activity. There's an introduction to EndNote, which is a software which you will know is invaluable if you have had any experience with it. There are some free training courses across UCL, and I always say to students, do take an opportunity to get trained on EndNote, because sometimes prospective academic employers are very keen to employ somebody who has EndNote experience. So there are general topics. We talk about writing skills and other generalizable skills across the academic terms and throughout the course. We also have opportunities to explore extended statistics, not just within the core module, but there are a number of very interesting courses, for example, on systematic reviews or qualitative analyses that are available in the Institute and across wider UCL. I would really encourage any student to take an opportunity to take advantage of these wonderful learning experiences. So let's think about the assessments. Very often students want to ask this question because it is key. Now, the first thing you'll notice, I'm just going to talk about the core modules because those will be appropriate for anybody who is doing whatever configuration of academic qualification you do with our programme. So the prenatal and newborn module, which is the first module that our students embark upon, is assessed by using a 3,000-word written essay. There are a number of formative experiences and workshops to get you into academic writing if you've been out of it for some time. For infant development, a core module, we use a 15-minute seminar presentation. So there's a 10-minute presentation and 5 minutes of discussion, and a 500-word supporting statement looking at the scientific rationale for picking that topic. For preschool years, there is a 1,500-word written commentary on a scientific paper. Now, we would choose that paper or give you a range of papers depending on your academic year. So everybody is given the same choice and you're asked to critique that paper. Then in the applied stats module, there's an unseen written exam. And finally, the research project is examined by a 10,000-word project write-up, a dissertation write-up as that stands. So you will see that there's a wide range of assessment experiences, and that of course is deliberate because that means you will leave our course with a whole range of new skills in terms of academic writing, presentation skills, research skills, and so on. And that's, we feel, is a very important part of your experience. Which brings me to this slide. What we hope you will gain from having participated in our programme is that, of course, you'll have a deep and broad understanding of the infancy and early childhood literature. You will be aware and introduced to the high quality research that is happening in our academic world right now. You will also gain some generalizable skills. That really brings me back to the slide that I was discussing earlier. So critical appraisal skills mean that you can assess and evaluate the literature in the here and now, but also forever. You know, whatever area of world, academic or clinical world you fall into, you will be able to assess the literature because you will have gained the skills to evaluate whether a study is valuable, whether it may have flaws, and that is a key postgraduate learning skill. You will learn research skills that are key whatever area of life you go into, academic, clinical, or any other health career path, and also communication skills. Now, it's our job as academics in this world to communicate the information, to different audiences. That might be other academic colleagues, it may be the general public, it may be clinical contexts and families, but it's very important that we communicate the information accurately and succinctly. So that means scientific writing, oral and visual presentation skills are absolutely fundamental, and you will leave this course having gained those. What do people do having participated and graduated through our program? Well, there's a whole range of different areas of career development. It may well be that having finished the MSc in particular, you go on to participate in a PhD. In fact, many of our students have done that, and both of our postgraduate teaching assistants took that path and are doing PhDs currently. And that means that you should and could make the most of the UCL networks in terms of thinking about current studies, different teams that are looking into areas of interest and who are recruiting PhD students in the following academic year. So look out for that. There are lots of opportunities to do that. Having the MSc will mean that your CV is augmented in a number of different ways. It might be that if you are interested in, let's say, for example, charity organizations or fundraising organizations, having this qualification will certainly highlight your specific skills and make you a much more attractive candidate. The MSc may be a pathway to other clinical training applications. So for example, learning to, applying to the DClinSci, the clinical psychology doctorate, is very competitive, and an MSc from UCL can help that application. We also have a number of existing professionals on our course, so teachers or OTs or speech and language therapists, and having done the program, they become specialists in the early years in their particular existing career path. So you can see the variety of different ways that the MSc can be used for, or depending on which program you participate in. Just a little reminder that this is an academic qualification, is not a clinical or a practitioner qualification. In other words, it may be part of augmenting your CV to make a clinical training application, but it is not in itself one that allows you to be a practitioner. Okay, just a little highlight about UCL, the campus, and London. Now, many of our students are international. They may be new to London, they may be new to the UK, they may be new to Europe. So we are aware that it is a new and very different experience for many of our students. But what we hope you will gain is that you will feel the breadth of extraordinary energy, both academic and lifestyle energy, that's in UCL and the campus, but also across London. It's an incredible city to live in, and we would hope that you will enjoy that experience, both in the narrowest sense within the lecture room, but also in the broader sense, and exploring London in its entirety. Before I stop for any questions, just a little advert really. We have on the 22nd of February, so not very long from now, we have a postgraduate research showcase conference. It's online, and this is a chance to hear from students who have participated in the last academic year or so in one of the programs running at GOS ICH. So you might see a student discussing mental health issues, another student discussing neuropsychology, also a range of topics including personalized medicine. So there's a whole aspect, a whole range of different topics that are being described by the students themselves, as well as another range of other interesting activities as well. So do come along and join. You just click on the link, it's free, and it's a great opportunity to dip your toe in the life of Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health postgraduate world. Okay, let's stop there. And if there are any questions, I can't see any on the chat right now, but if there are any questions, I want to stop the share so our faces are a little bit larger and we can see each other. Any questions about what we've presented? even if it seems something straightforward, we always encourage questions because everybody will have the same one on their mind. Do put it in the chat bar, or you can switch on your microphone if you prefer. If you'd rather not be recorded, just let me know and I can stop the recording. Any questions or thoughts, even if it wasn't raised in the presentation? What we often find is students go away and have a think about what we've said, and then they may get in touch, which by all means is absolutely appropriate. I think, let me just say, do you know what I'll do is I'll put our details up here so you can email us if you wish.
And maybe one thing just to add that we kind of haven't said is that our class size is not massive. It's usually in the range of around 12 to 14. So I think that's, I think it's a really nice experience because there's lots of sort of one-to-one chat with the lecturers. It gives you a chance to kind of really get to know the group. It's kind of a very sociable group. We go out and have lunches together and do stuff like that. And so it's, I think it's a really nice experience in some ways because you don't sort of feel anonymous in a class of like 80 or 100 or whatever. You can really get to know people and really, it's really enjoyable. Yeah.
Another social aspect is that because of the modules, or we call them short fat modules, so they are, you know, intense days, you know, across sort of 2 weeks. It means that you're together with your peer group at the beginning of the academic year, and we know that that means that our student body get a very cohesive social sense of identity. And, you know, for example, when there's a period of time where lots of students are, you know, going on to the optional modules, that group of core IECD students stay together. They have study groups. And we also offer during the third term when we're doing dissertation write-up, because writing up a dissertation can be a lonely experience. So we have drop-in sessions, sometimes they're virtual, sometimes they're face-to-face, for all the students to come and talk about their triumphs and their worries, no matter what that is kind of the flavour of their discussion. And that social aspect is continued all the way through the year. So I mean, certainly our feedback from the students is that it's a social and you know, positive experience that we can recommend, with lots of international students, by the way. So if you are new to the city, as I said, it's a very familiar experience, and there's lots of support in UCL and within the student group. From Panama. Hello, Diana from Panama. There you are. Well, there we are. You will, if you're considering joining us from Panama, you will, I imagine, get some really nice experiences with sharing your experiences from Panama, but also, you know, getting some warm welcomes from London too. So that's one of the joys of this course. We are an eclectic bunch, whether that's culturally or in terms of our disciplines, but the joy of that is that we are stronger for that. So it's wonderful. So thank you. Great to hear from you. Shall we? I mean, you can see I've got up on the slide there, you can see we have our email addresses. So you can drop an email at any point when you think of something that springs to mind. We're delighted to have emails. We often set up chats with students before their application. That we're very happy to do that. That's what we're here for. If you have any question, whether that's a broad question or a very specific one, you can certainly contact us at any point. Absolutely. Michelle, I'm just thinking about what the application deadline is. Do we know that? Or does that will change? Presumably it does tend to change. It's one thing that's springing to mind.
I think it's quite open for this academic year at the moment.
It does change. Some academic years it changes. So just, I guess, to be aware that if there is a deadline, do keep an eye on it. If you're wondering about making an application, it's better to make your application sooner rather than later. Sometimes it can be quite late into summer, but it's also in the past, it's been in spring, and that.
So I just double checked it, Jane, and the deadline is the 30th of June.
Right, okay, so that's fairly late. Well, it's late. What would we call that? That's summer, isn't it? It's firmly in summer.
It's later than it has sometimes been, but yeah, so it's still the 30th of June.
So
and perhaps also to say, although Jane and I try and review applications quite frequently, it is a bit of a process. So even if we've viewed it and taken a decision, it has to go through sort of a bit 2 levels of administration in our department and then central UCL before you will get that. So we do try and act quickly, because I know people want responses pretty quickly. But there is a small lag, because it does get reviewed at a few different levels, just to kind of say we can't sort of, even if we wanted to, even if we acted, if Jane and I decided on the day you submitted the application, it would still be a little bit of time before you would get that email response. So if it takes a bit of time, that's nothing negative about your application. And sometimes too, it can be, we only see them once applications are complete. So it might be that your application is waiting on one of your references or something like that. So we will not see it until everything has gone in, just to let you know.
Just see, Alison has just confirmed that deadline is the 30th.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So Hannah was saying, can you please say some words about the personal statement? And I'm assuming you mean in terms of the application, there's a personal statement that goes alongside that. That really is an opportunity for you to describe why the course is attractive to you. So you might describe some of your previous experiences. You might describe where you want to go in terms of your academic or, employment path. What specifically in the course you're interested in. And I think, there's a whole range. It's a little bit like an essay. This is not very helpful, I'm afraid, but, there is no perfect personal statement. There can be very different personal statements, and all of them can be very good. But I think a way of showing that for you, this course is a sensible choice, that you've got some interest, and we're not expecting you to have any qualifications in terms of being a specialist in the early years, but just showing an interest in that and fulfilling the basic UCL criteria, which will be evident in the other aspects of your qualification. So it's an option really to describe a little bit about yourself and why the course is useful or valuable to you. But what I would say is that if you see a personal statement that's very different from the one you have in mind, I wouldn't worry about that at all, because there's a variety of different wonderful ways of addressing the personal statement issue. Michelle, you might have something else to add to that.
I agree. I will also just say maybe another thing that you can add in, if you have some thoughts on it, is sort of how you see this fitting into your career path. That's something interesting to add. But again, if you don't know that at this point, that's not a horrible thing. Maybe, you might be taking it to decide what your career path is, to see like where this will lead you. And people do that too. But something along those lines. And there's not sort of a required or standard length, which is sometimes what people worry about. I would say probably something around 1.5 to 2 pages is sufficient. But again, it's not set in stone that if it's longer or shorter, that it's not a good statement or anything like that. It just needs to include some of those elements, as Jane mentioned.
So I think, really have a good look at the website and really think about why specifically this course is the one that interests you. And I think if you can convey that, a sense of interest and enthusiasm relating to the course content, I think that's a good starting point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great. Glad that was helpful.
Yes, now we've got another question here from Diana. You highlighted that this is an academic training, not clinical, but I'd like to know if there's a possibility of doing any observation in the clinical setting, for example, how to apply certain tests. There are, in the context, potentially in the context of your dissertation. So some students, for example, will be part of a project that includes data collection, let's say, that might be in a nursery or in a hospital setting. And they will be collecting data and probably trained to collect that data using, you know, standardized tests or whatever. And so that is an opportunity. If you make yourself very valuable, which I often say to students, you know, if you are part of a research team in the context of your data collection, you know, see what else you can observe and how else you can be useful, because sometimes you will become a valuable honorary member of the team for a short time. So that's a possibility. But that is on a case-by-case basis. So it would depend on the dissertation you choose and the supervisor's activities, and it's certainly not a guarantee. There are sometimes opportunities to be research assistants or that are advertised around the institute. That sometimes happens, and we would post those on our notice board. And you know, being a part-time research assistant, you know, as a separate activity happens fairly frequently, but that's not part of our course, nor would it be assessed or formally, you know, considered part of the academic activity.
Just to add to that, in the core teaching modules, it's not an observation in person, but there's some of the course in terms of looking at assessment and stuff. It's we look at videos and discuss the videos and how things are assessed, and you can see other people delivering the assessment, and then we look at videos and discuss how, you know, what interpretation we would make. So there's that, although it's not sort of alive, there is that aspect. And then in terms of the optional modules, there was one that's infant and neurodevelopmental assessment. And in that, we usually have some live demonstrations of some developmental tests, like the Bailey. There's different neurodevelopmental standardized tests. So we usually have some live demonstrations of those. So it's not in a clinical setting, but there are tools that are used in you know, as standard clinical tools and neurodevelopmental assessments. And we have, you know, actual live babies coming in, and we observe somebody doing that assessment and get a chance to ask questions. So that is, you know, part of the course that isn't sort of extra as the things that Jane mentioned that, you know, can be incorporated as well in terms of your learning. Okay, let's see if there's any other last questions.
Well, you know where to find us.
Yes.
Drop us an email should something come to mind. Thank you for those questions. That's really lovely to hear from you, and you know, your thoughts and questions are very much appreciated. Do get in touch if something else comes up. And but other than that,
I think that's it. And we hope if you can make it on the 22nd, as Jane said, it's a chance kind of to see people will be presenting their MSc research projects. So it'll be a chance for you to see what that's all about. But again, it will be recorded, so it will be available offline if you can't sort of make it on the day. And yeah, we look forward to any further questions, and you know, possibly to see you next academic year.
thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Jane and Michelle. Take care.